Welcome to our special Wednesday edition of Beat Diabetes. We've canceled Tuesdays for a while. We've moved to Wednesdays, and Wednesday is your day to beat diabetes by Christmas. The whole focus is on this challenge. Can you get below diabetic numbers by Christmas? We'll be talking about the nuts and bolts of the diet, the lifestyle, and the various aspects of the challenge. So you don't want to miss any Wednesday. You're not really doing the challenge if you don't follow the links and you don't watch the Wednesday videos. If you have to give up one, give up Sunday, give up Friday, but don't give up Wednesday. Hopefully you'll watch them all. But Wednesday is your day, and we're going to divide the Wednesdays into two parts normally. And the first part will just be about the various aspects of the challenge, trying to solve some issues, or share a testimony, or just give a little bit of encouragement. And then the second part will be more or less a lecture or a talk about the various aspects of the challenge. So part B will be the lecture. Part A will be just housekeeping, you might say. So you want to see it all. If you're not doing the challenge and you're already down to a good A1C, you might want to skip the first part and just get to the second part. Up to you. But this is your day. Now, there's going to be links under these Wednesday videos that pertain to the challenge. And some people get confused if they don't know much about YouTube. And they're like, well, you're promising us all these links. I don't see them. Well, that's because in the normal format of a video, YouTube just allows about 3 lines of the description, and there could be a whole lot more. Those few lines of the description that you see at first, that's like the tip of the iceberg. So you've got to click on the word more, M-O-R-E, more. Used to say show more. You clicked on. Now they've cut out the show, so now it's just more. You got to click on that so you'll see the whole description, and there will be some links, and we'll talk about those in a minute. I do want to announce we have over 3,000 people signed up for the challenge. Could well go up to 4,000 before we close the registration. The registration we will allow to go on through September, but as of October 1, it closes. Now, there'll still be a sign-up page that you can go to, but what you'll be doing is signing up for the next challenge. So you won't be able to sign up for this one. However, you can still watch the Wednesday videos and get a lot out of them and basically get the heart of the challenge. And speaking of that, one of the great frustrations about these challenges, both on your end and on my end, comes from the fact that people say, I've signed up and I'm just not getting any emails. And I get that every challenge. I've signed up, I'm not getting many emails or not getting any emails. What's the deal? And there's a number of possibilities. But the one of the major possibilities is you are getting emails, but they're going into a spam folder or a social folder. You know, a lot of your email software has various folders, and it decides where it wants to put the emails coming into you. And if you're just looking at your inbox and you're not checking your social folder, your spam folder, your junk folder, the different folders, you may be getting them and you don't think you are. So that is one very definite possibility. Now, another possibility is you didn't register properly, because on that sign-up page, and we're no longer saying, send me an email and count me in. That was the old school way. But I had a wonderful man who volunteered to help me get this thing automated so that you automatically sign yourself in, and I don't have to enter your emails, nor does Benedictus. So that is saving us a ton of time. And on the sign-up page as it is right now, it could change. But for right now, there's 2 blanks to fill out. One is your email. The other is your name. You could get by without even filling out your name, or just put your first name. The email we have to have. But if you get those mixed up and you put your email where the name is supposed to go and put the name where the email is supposed to go, you're not registered. So that could be a problem. And one thing you need to know is you can always register twice. It's not like you're going to get 2 emails from me. It'll just update your information. Unless you register with 2 different email addresses, then you will get 2 emails going to each one to each address. So make sure when you register that you get the email where it's supposed to be and the name where it's supposed to be. And there is a link in the description for the registration page. All you got to do is, again, click on that magic word more, M-O-R-E, and find the full description and go to the registration page and put the email where it's supposed to be, the name where it's supposed to be, and you should be good to go. But I will say this, there are some mysteries about email and about the internet that I don't know, and I don't know if anybody knows. So some people get very frustrated. They're like, well, I've tried this and I've tried that, and would you please help me? And the answer is no, I really can't. Number one, I'm not that smart when it comes to emails. If you can't figure it out, I probably cannot either. And two, I don't have time to worry about all the individual things. We're on an automated list. The good news is you can still see the emails even though you're not getting the emails. You say, how is that possible? Because in the links in the description, I'm going to have the last couple of emails that I sent with a link to them. Those emails are on the web, and you can view them on the web. You don't have to get them to your inbox. So if you watch the Wednesday video and you go to the description, and you may see email number 5 and email number 6. I think today it's just going to be email number 1 and 2. But if you see email 5, 6, 1, 2, whatever, you can click on those links and it will show you the last couple of emails that I've sent out. So even if worst comes to worst, and somehow you're not getting them, you've checked every folder that it's possible to check and they're not showing up, you know you've registered properly, you're frustrated, you can always simply go to the Wednesday video, which you should be watching anyway, go to the description, click on the links for the latest emails, and you'll see everything just as though you had received it in your inbox. If you're not sure if you registered right, you think you may have, just register another time. It's not going to hurt anything, and it might solve the problem. Keep in mind that even when you register, it's not as though you're going to get automatic emails from me that very next day. You will get one automated email that'll come straight to you, or it should, saying you're in. Welcome to the 2023 challenge, or something along those lines. So you should get one. After that, you may not get one for several days because they're not coming out every day or two. I did send a couple of emails out in a hurry, I think in a couple of days at the beginning because I had some important things to share, and there'll be a link to those emails in the description. But normally they'll come out once a week, usually on Wednesdays or Thursdays. So if you, I think normally Wednesdays or Thursdays the emails will come, but there should be a link to the email in the Wednesday posting of my YouTube. So even if you never receive a single email, you can still follow the program exactly. There'll also be a link to the diet for that particular month. So just check the links under the description on these Wednesday. They won't be under the description for Sunday or Friday normally, but they will be under the description. There'll be important links under the description for the Wednesday YouTube postings. All right. Every email you receive, there will be some repetition. Some things I'm going to leave in there the whole time. For example, there is a formula to do your A1C, to figure it out using your glucose meter without even going to the lab. And that is by taking 5 tests, and I recommend the times, like an hour before a meal, an hour after a meal, before you go to bed, when you wake up. There's 5 different times I recommend. And what you do is you add those up. But you have to divide by 5 after you add up the total, get an average glucose reading for the day, and then you click on the link that'll take you to a formula where you can plug it in and find out what your A1C would be if you stayed at that level. Now, hopefully you'll improve. So that if you do this today and you say, well, it shows me having an A1C of 8.5, and you do this a month from now, it may show you doing a whole lot better. Hopefully it will. So that's going to give you a current A1C. Normally, when you get a lab A1C, it's going to reach back over the last 3 to 4 months and check how your sugar has been, and it's going to average it all out. So it's not really a current A1C you're getting. It's not like, here's what's going on today. It's like, here's what's been going on the last 3 to 4 months. But using this glucose meter A1C, 5 tests over 1 day, and I'll show you when to do them, and I'll put a link to the formula, that will tell you exactly what's going on today. And basically what that will tell you is, if I keep on like this, if I stay exactly at this level with these kind of glucose levels and readings over the next few months, then when I go to a lab, that it should be pretty close to this. And if you've got a fairly accurate glucometer, it will do that. I know they're not perfect, but they should be good enough to give you a pretty good idea. So be familiar with how that works. I know 5 glucose strips is a lot to use in 1 day, but it's worth it every few weeks just to see, where am I right now? Not where was I 3 months ago. Where am I right now in terms of a A1C? And if I keep like this, then I know that this should be pretty close to what I would get if I went to a lab. Okay, so at the email that I'm sending, there'll be a link to the current diet. And by the way, I'm a little bit more free with the diet than I was. Not free in terms of allowing you to eat a lot of carbs. I'm not free at all about that. But I'm more free in terms of, I give you a list of meals. You don't have to eat them in any particular order. In previous challenges, I told you what to eat on Monday and Tuesday. I do want you to do carnivore on Mondays. But the rest of the days, you can pick meal number 17 or meal number 12, whatever you want to do. Or you can forget the menu and eat any meat in any low-carb vegetable or any low-carb salad. So I'm not nearly as picky. I guess I'm kind of like a parent. You know, when you're a parent of several children, you're always the toughest on that first child. You want to do everything right. And your rules are all so strict. And then by the time child number 3 or 4 comes along, you've kind of eased up a little bit and you're not quite as fanatical as you were at the beginning. And that's kind of how I am with these challenges. The main thing is eat low-carb meals. But here's another thing. I really want you to try some of the meals that I'm suggesting. And the reason is, I want you to come away from this challenge with some new recipes, some new favorite go-to low-carb meals. If you've just got 3 or 4 meals that you say, I know these are low carb, I know these will work, and that's about it, you could burn out easily. But if you start developing new, exciting low carb meals and some keto desserts and different foods that are really tasty and very low carb, you're much more likely to stay with it long after this challenge is history, long after I'm history. So please try different meals. And go to various keto YouTube channels and that are, I'm not a cook. I've learned enough that I can get around in the kitchen and make myself some keto meals and so forth. But there are some of these people, that's their life. I mean, that is just what they live for, is coming up with a new keto meal, a new low-carb meal. And they are so good. You can't always trust them, so test yourself with your glucometer and make sure that your body doesn't overreact. But there are some of them that are really good. Let me give you one warning. Be careful with store-bought keto breads and keto tortillas or low-carb tortillas. They have a way they make those things, and they jam in a lot of ingredients that have a lot of fiber to them. And it's like a super fiber, and it's supposed to pass right through you. And of course, it could cause diarrhea, would be one of the things. But a lot of times it doesn't quite make it all the way through, and it does raise blood sugar. But a lot of times it's after about 3 hours. For this challenge, limit yourself. If you're going to eat a keto low-carb bread or low-carb tortilla, 1 per day. Don't go beyond that. If you want to do 1, you say, I want to make a sandwich, take a slice of keto bread and put some ham and cheese and lettuce and tomato on it. That's fine. 1 slice, but don't put a top slice on there. Don't do 2. And 1 slice per day or 1 low-carb tortilla per day. Don't go past 1. You can't really trust totally, I've found, the low-carb breads and low-carb tortillas. Some of them work better than others, and you got to be careful to test. It seems like the ones you make yourself do better than that, because the ones that you buy in the store, they've got like 20 ingredients. The ones you make yourself have maybe 3 or 4. And they're just safer, I've discovered. So you can leave a comment if you've had experiences with that. What else? No more than 2 keto desserts. Once you get past this challenge, you want to graduate to 3, so be it. I just don't think it's good to be constantly having a sweet after every meal or after every dinner. So but on the other hand, I don't think it's so good not to ever have anything sweet, ever. Just nothing sweet will ever enter these holy lips again. I think that's a recipe for backsliding. It's a recipe for falling away. So yeah, most of us enjoy, myself included, an occasional sweet, an occasional keto treat. Not a normal sugary treat, but don't go hog wild. Don't do it every day. Before we go very far into this challenge and program to reverse diabetes within 4 to 6 months, we have to answer the question, can this even be done? Is this the impossible dream? Obviously, I don't feel that way at all, but in this little talk, I want to convince you of this. We hear it like a drumbeat over and over again. Diabetes is progressive. Diabetes is progressive. Progressive, progressive, progressive. You've got it, you will always have it, and it's only going to get worse every year that it passes. You think you've got it bad now. Wait about 10 years, and then you'll see just what a monster this diabetes is if you live that long. But if that were true, it should hold true for everyone. Every single diabetic who's ever lived should have deteriorated from diagnosis to death, getting worse and worse with more and more painful neuropathy from year to year, worse vision as the years go by, failing kidneys that grow progressively diseased, and with an A1C that just gets increasingly higher throughout the rest of their short, miserable, painful lives. If diabetes is automatically progressive for all of us, there should be no testimonies. You should never hear of anybody ever turning back the clock and significantly improving their blood sugar levels as they age. Anyone diagnosed with diabetes in their 50s should be an absolute wreck in their 70s, going blind, unable to walk, having their legs amputated, and in a state of wretchedness and gloom at the inevitability of ever-progressing diabetes. At least that's the way it should be, the way many people talk. But it is not that way, not for many, and especially not for those who become regular friends of this YouTube channel. If you don't believe that, read some of the comments underneath my videos and watch some of the interviews I do with people from all over the world. I have interviewed men from Scotland, from the Middle East, from Canada, and various other places, women from the Philippines and Israel and many other places who've all testified that their glucose levels and their diabetic complications have improved, not just slightly, not just a little bit, but dramatically once they began adopting the powerful 1-2 punch of a low-carbohydrate diet and time-restricted eating. Instead of their diabetes getting worse and worse as they aged, their blood sugar levels and their A1C scores got better and better, until at last many of their doctors told them, "You're no longer diabetic." And many asked them, "What in the world have you been doing?" These people did not fit the official diabetes narrative, which says diabetics always must get worse and can never improve. Somehow, I guess they missed that memo or ignored it and found their diabetes progressing all right, but it was progressing in reverse, getting better instead of worse. If you add together all the people I've interviewed over the course of the years of Beat Diabetes, and then you add all the many, many, many people who have testified in the comments sections at my videos, we are looking at thousands of people whose diabetes retreated to such an extent it is no longer recognized as diabetes, either by their A1C scores or their fasting glucose levels. And the interesting thing about these people is that they're not all a group of freaks exactly alike who have some weird gene in their bodies that gave them an extra boost of power or motivation. They were not all geniuses who studied so hard they figured out something that ordinary people could never grasp. They're just ordinary men and women of different ages, races, and from different cultures who simply got hold of the right information and somehow gained a little motivation along their journey, and they have become powerful testimonies to the truth that when you stop adding wood to the fire will eventually burn itself out. I'll never forget what one man told me about a conversation he had with his doctor. When his doctor saw his incredibly improved A1C going from very diabetic to non-diabetic, the doctor said to him, "It's a miracle." And the man told me, he said, "Well, I'm a Christian. I believe in miracles, but I had to tell my doctor, no, it's not a miracle. It is science." Well, I understood exactly what he was talking about. I'm also a Christian. I also believe in miracles. But when a man or a woman lowers their glucose levels through a methodical program of carbohydrate restriction and time-restricted eating, it's simply the judicious use of one of God's laws which He has built into the universe. When something happens that almost never usually happens and probably isn't likely to ever happen again, such as a man falling off the roof of a 50-story building onto the sidewalk and then surviving with no broken bones, no bruises, and looking and feeling perfectly fine, well, we would call that a miracle. If you tried to repeat that with 100 other people, they would almost certainly all die. That would not be repeatable. But some things are repeatable. When I was a kid, my parents bought me a bow and some arrows. And rather than shoot at targets, I loved to shoot the arrows straight up into the sky. They would climb and climb into the air until they became small, and then at some point they would pause, and for about a half a second they would be motionless. And then they would start falling back to the earth, and in a short time they'd land back in my backyard. This happened over and over again. In fact, it never did not happen. I do not remember one time when one of those arrows took off into the air and kept right on flying until it disappeared, and then I never saw it again. Never, not once. Was it a miracle that the arrows flew a certain distance into the air, paused, and then fell back to the ground? No, that was no miracle. It had to do with one of the laws of our world, the law of gravity. And this law was so inviolate that it did not permit a single exception. Similarly, there are laws related to our physical health, and in particular to our blood sugar. Doctors and researchers could express this in much more brilliant terms than I could, but in simple terms, it's a law of our universe related to our bodies, which says that out of the 3 basic macronutrients in the foods we eat, which would be fat, protein, and carbohydrate, only carbohydrate raises blood sugar to any significant degree. Eat a steak, and you get no noticeable glucose rise. Eat a stick of butter, which I wouldn't do, or drink a glass of heavy cream, your glucose levels are going to remain rock steady. But eat a baked potato or a big piece of chocolate cake and ice cream, and your glucose levels are off to the races. For most middle-aged men and women, such foods are going to rocket their glucose past 150, past 180, past 200 milligrams per deciliter. And this is repeatable. It's going to happen on Tuesday, and it'll happen on Sunday. It'll happen when you have a good night's rest, and it will happen when you barely slept. It will happen when you're happy and feeling great. And it's also going to happen when you're gloomy and depressed. Some people love to say, well, we're all different, therefore no one remedy for runaway blood sugar will work for everybody. Well, it is true that we are different, but when it comes to spiking glucose, some things are not all that different. Suppose we gather 1,000 people together, making sure they represent all sorts of humanity. We have smart people, and we have some that are not too bright. We have skinny people and fat people. We have black and white and brown people. We have talkative people who can never keep quiet, and we have introverts who find it painful to say anything to anybody. So we have all these people to eat 2 meals on 2 succeeding evenings. On the first meal, they will eat a meal of baked potato, a large chunk of French bread, a bowl of beans, and finally they're fed a large slice of cherry pie with loads of vanilla ice cream on top. And everybody gets the exact same meal. They must eat every bit of it. On the second night, they're given a meal of a large marbled steak, a garden salad with Italian dressing, and a good-sized helping of cauliflower with melted cheese over it. And there is no dessert this time. 1 hour and 15 minutes after they finish eating both those meals, their blood sugar is tested. Without ever running this experiment, and I'm sure nobody ever will, but without running it, we would know the outcome. The high-carb first meal would raise glucose levels far higher than the low-carb second meal. This would be certain and it would be repeatable. You could do it this month, next month. You could try it with other larger groups. You could run this test in Kenya or China or Brazil or Ireland. It wouldn't matter. The outcome would always be the same everywhere. With any people you could enlist from anywhere over the globe, or everybody. And when their blood sugar soared high after the first meal and remained low after the second, you would not say to yourself, wow, this is a miracle. No, it would not be a miracle. It would simply be the outworking of one of the laws of the universe. It's just how things are. Now, here's where it gets good. There is another law which says when you stop eating high carbohydrate foods like bread and tortillas and potatoes and rice and sugary desserts, and when you stop drinking sodas and fruit juice, your blood sugar levels will stop spiking. And as a result, your baseline glucose levels will start drifting in a downward direction. And this is repeatable. It happens again and again and again. Now, it may take longer for some than others, but it always works. It would be nearly impossible for a diabetic to stop feeding the fires of diabetes by seriously restricting the carbohydrates in his diet and his blood to remain as it was. It just couldn't happen. Improvement is going to come. It always comes. The speed of the recovery can vary with the individual, but the direction he takes is a given. If you stop putting logs on the fire in your fireplace, it is going to burn out. If the previous logs you did put there were big and bulky, well, it may take longer than if they were small and brittle. But the fire burning itself out is beyond question. It is just a matter of time. It will happen. Just wait for it and avoid the temptation to throw a couple more logs on that fire. In the days before doctors knew there were such things as germs and infection, a Hungarian doctor named Ignaz Semmelweis became appalled when he noticed that women who gave birth in the maternity clinic that was staffed by male doctors were dying at a rate nearly 5 times higher than the women who gave birth at a nearby maternity clinic that was staffed by female midwives. That didn't make any sense to him. He studied what went on in those two clinics, trying to figure out what was behind this terrible discrepancy. In the midwives' clinic, the women were encouraged to give birth on their sides, but in the doctor's ward, the women gave birth on their backs, so Dr. Semmelweis had the doctors to have the women give birth on their sides, thinking, well, that's probably the difference, but it made no difference at all. Sides or back, the rates of death stayed the same. The women were still dying at a horrific rate when they were attended by male doctors. Finally, he realized that his doctors were doing autopsies on people who had died of all kinds of fevers, and often these doctors, after doing an autopsy, would go straight into the maternity ward to deliver women of their babies or to examine women. And somehow he figured that the doctors were transferring something from the diseased corpses that they were doing the autopsies on onto the women, which was causing them to die from fevers similar to that which had killed those people who had been autopsied by the doctors. And then Dr. Semmelweis made a strange policy change. He ordered all the male doctors to wash their hands before examining or otherwise touching the women in the maternity ward. And lo and behold, the death rate in that maternity ward dropped like a stone and became equivalent to the ward run by the midwives. Dr. Semmelweis still didn't really understand anything about germs or infections. That knowledge was going to come along later, but he did find out that hand washing was a powerful deterrent to death rates in his maternity ward. Sadly, it took a long time for everybody else to catch up with the good doctor, and many people mocked him, thought it was just totally ignorant and superstitious to have his doctors wash their hands. Now, do you see a parallel here? We know that by cutting carbs and narrowing our window of eating and eliminating snacks, we can beat diabetes. We've seen it again and again and again and again. But there are a lot of naysayers who mock us as ignorant. Still, we know what we know, and the evidence and the testimonies of hundreds of thousands of former diabetics, both in terms of this YouTube channel and Dr. Jason Fung's patients, Dr. Richard Bernstein's patients, and others, all of these testimonies proves us right. And what I ask of you in this challenge is to invest 4 or 6 months of your life into these truths and see what happens to you. you've got nothing to lose and everything to gain. Start making the laws of our universe work for you and not against you. It may not exactly be a miracle, but I'll tell you what, it is surely a blessing from God.